and the ancestors are looking out for us. God Hayes is exposing them, man.
Okay, you see that chair right there? See how big it is?
Yeah.
Now look at the Pope chair under it. Scroll down, look at the Pope chair under it.
Never have it been made so clear.
Young TV. Young.
We running the game right now.
Young TV.
Time to take over.
Young TV.
We the hottest in the game. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button. If you just not tuned in.
TV.
Share, like on your Instagram, Facebook.
Young TV.
If you tuned in, we broadcasting live from 2030, baby.
Young TV. Young
Taking over the game, baby. Oh yeah.
Young TV.
Hit that like.
Young TV.
Get them likes up in the air, you heard me?
Young TV.
Ride by. Hotel Islam.
Young TV.
Assalamu alaikum. Shalom alaikum.
Young TV.
One Yaqub Muhammad, also known as Jacob York, has already been ousted as committing check fraud to buy a house. Now, like I say, this is what this Damian Pryor guy come in connection with committing the check frauds and the credit card scams with Jacob York. Like we say, Jacob York, Yaqub, which means trickster and underminer, is the real charlatan here. What is a charlatan? A person who practices quackery or a similar confidential trick in order to obtain money, power, fame, or other advantages through pretense or deception. As you can see by the definition, Yaqub Muhammad, aka Jacob York, is the only real fraud guy here. He's the only real guy that's the charlatan, scamming people in the industry out of contracts and their money, and also had a deal with the feds right after he got busted. We're gonna get more into that. You already heard about Jacob York getting sued for using the NBA symbol and putting a gun in the guy's hand, right? So this guy's had a lot of run-ins with big time organizations. He's known, right, as a charlatan. In the industry, he had beat people out of money. We can play you the clip where Polo the Don say, if you see Jacob York, run. Right?
If you see this man, run.
So a lot of people know about Jacob York and his shady contracts and shady business deals. He's the real charlatan, y'all. Not to mention his long-term girlfriend, who he managed, who sued him for $1.4 million in court, which he lost recently in 2020. I mean, I ain't even gotta beat it over your head to show you what this guy's all about. We imagine that $1.4 million set him back pretty far because we spotted him eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and cooking bologna sandwiches. So he must have went broke. Let's cut to that clip, Zeke.
Tell me you grew up in the hood without telling me you grew up in the hood. I'll go first.
So this man's so broke that he cooking bologna sandwiches to survive and trying to play it off like he from the block, like he from the hood. His name speaks for itself. He's a trickster. He's a charlatan. He's one of them short arm, short, big head, Balkan looking dudes. And we can't wait till somebody catch him digging in his behind at the grocery store or the gas station somewhere where we can use that as incriminating evidence. Keep in mind, birds of a feather flock together. So Jacob York's right-hand man and pal who eventually snitched on him, right? Damian Pryor. And keep in mind, you got to start looking at some of these people's names. Keep in mind, Damian is like 666, the devil's son. And Pryor, meaning that he had priors before. Why? Because the devil children continuously do evil. We told y'all that. So this guy, Damian Pryor, who has a prior run-ins with the police, we got some of the police documents right here showing when he got arrested. As you can clearly see, he's well known by 12. And this gets even deeper. Why? Because Damian Pryor, like we said, is connected with the R. Kelly P on Me video case. I mean, this thing is deep, man. This is some Jerry Springer's type stuff that's going on here with this case. So this guy go way back as a criminal, right? The question we need to be asking is how did Damian Pryor know that Jacob York went to the feds? And technically, Jacob York, Yakub, didn't go to the feds. He actually was scared of the feds. He was trying to avoid the feds. The feds came down on him, Damian Pryor, and another brother who was one of Jacob York's brother and one of Malachi's son by the name of Ayub. And we had a picture of Ayub, but we lost it and we couldn't get another picture from the family. RIP to Ayub for standing up, man, for his dad and not folding, letting these killer clowns fold him. Ayub kind of resembled Prince York to me when you see him, right? A picture of him. But to make a long story short, Ayub, Jacob York, and Damian Pryor gets approached by the feds, right? That's how Damian Pryor knew that Jacob York made a deal with the feds, because he made a deal with the feds as well. The feds allegedly offered them 40 years each. Jacob came out with the idea to take down his dad, while IU refused. And then later, Dorsey York took a deal. Now keep this in mind. They gave Damian Pryor 3 days to try to convince IU to join in with them to turn against their father, but IU refused. Week later, Damian Pryor gets out of jail. And Jacob York, who's already took a deal with the devil. Because Jacob York told on Damian Pryor. Keep that in mind. Once Jacob York turned state on Damian Pryor and IU, they both got picked up together. To make a long story short, like I said, IU wouldn't turn on his dad. Damian Pryor took the deal. All of a sudden, IU get beat to death in his cell. And then Damian Pryor gets out a week later. So the killer clowns could not let IU live because he would have called home and blew Damian Pryor's and Jacob York's cover as informants. Keep in mind, you gotta go back and get them tapes, Killer Clowns Exposed Part 1 through 4. Damian Pryor gets out, changes his name to Dorsey York. And keep in mind, this is a guy who do fraudulent documents. I mean, come on, man. All the evidence is right here, man. We ain't gotta sit here and make nothing up no more. This guy's a known fraudulent document guy, right? He hooked up with Jacob York to do fraudulent checks and fraudulent documents to the bank. I mean, and keep in mind, this is part of COINTELPRO tactics, man, and operations, man. I mean, I ain't got to keep here and sitting trying to beat this over your head what these guys was all about. Here's a guy that's a known criminal that gets out after making a deal with the feds, changed his name to Dorsey York, and a known criminal work his way up to be an ambassador of the tribe. Now, how does that happen? How do we let this happen? A known criminal. This guy's been accused of numerous child molestation charges, which he allegedly beat some kind of way mysteriously. I wonder how. Is it because he was in connection in bed with the feds? He was working for the Killer Clowns as an informant? Keep in mind, Dr. Malachi Z York supposed to got released in 2019. They have reason to believe that Damian Pryor was responsible for sabotaging this part. I mean, how in the world does a guy who's in bed with the feds get out, then work his way up to the top of the tribe, and he's a known fraud guy. Now we're getting ready to cut to a clip where the Empress Mama Ratbird explains how Damian Pryor wrestled her down for the paperwork in the parking lot. Now this is about to get interesting. Let's cut to that clip.
That led up to me going back to look at what Dujwa done.
Hey, could you go into detail that how Dujwa snatched he wrestled you for the documents, like go into that whole storyline, because that's interesting.
Sure. I want to go back to Dujwa had to be working with someone because they knew I was the bloodline. And he was hired to probably manipulate me in more ways than I probably can think about, right? But when we was over in Egypt, the documents of the land, the allodial title, and all that stuff was brought to Egypt. And that the judge and myself and Dujwa, along with the notary, met. And while we was in that meeting and the transfer of the land was being given to me and the books being open as to what's in all the accounts, Dujwa wanted to talk about Dr. York. That was the first mention of him to me. And I'm telling everybody up front, for the record, I had no knowledge of Dr. York prior before July, whenever I was over in Egypt. On up till that point, I was in Egypt when Dujwa, while I was speaking with the judge, brought up Dr. York's name. And being that I was the Empress, that he gave me a scenario of what was going on with Dr. York and him being need to free Dr. York from jail. And being the humanitarian woman that I am, of course, I was in agreement with that. I didn't do any research. I didn't know anything other than the fact that he told me he was unjustly in jail, in prison. And I agree that whatever it takes, that we would do that. And he said, well, we're going to need the orders from the judge, and the judge can't do it unless you say so. And so I told the judge, I said, you and Dujwa work out all the details. And the judge said that the first thing need to go is it need to go to Alvin Long, the person at the bottom of this document.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to send to wherever Alvin was. And I want to say at that time, Alvin might have been in China.
Mm.
And so the judge said he had to send the orders over there and let Alvin either create the document or whatever, and then it had to be sent back to Paul for notaries. And then from Paul, it was instructed to send them to Dujwa so that me and him could go and execute to go get Dr. York.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the chain of command from Egypt to China, where Mr. Long was, back to London, and then from London. And instead of me saying, and I look back 2020, right? I should have told them to send them documents straight to me.
Mm.
But I didn't do that. I had them to send them to Dujwa.
Mm.
And the documents were sent to Dujwa while we're preparing to
Let me ask you something. Did Dujwa suggest you send them to him, or y'all just thought about that without him saying anything about it?
Well, I thought, since he was really more familiar with Dr. York, and to make sure that things were were going accordingly, I think that I might have said send the documents to Dujwa.
Because you thought, because you thought he was his son, because that's what
Yeah,
he told you.
that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
He's not related to him at all. He's not.
Okay, so in my defense, I'm thinking that this is it would be all right since they needed to work out the details, right?
Mhm.
And so when the documents were finished and passed from one place to the next, I never saw the documents until we got to Colorado
Mm.
when it was time to execute the documents. The second part of the document was what Dujwa and I worked on before we left Charlotte
Mm.
to leave to go to Colorado with my marshal.
So you met him originally where?
I met him originally in Philadelphia through my marshal, who said that there was someone that I needed to go to meet with in Philadelphia in regards to my position as the Empress.
Who?
And that he was working on, Dujwa was a liaison for First Republic.
Mm.
Okay, he was working supposedly for Africa and North America to get the indigenous people back to their lands and the original people of the lands to be restored back to their original owners.
And did he
The
provide any
original people
documents?
of the indigenous people, yes.
And he provided documents of this too. Well, this guy clearly is a great scammer or something. You know, he used to do scam with my brother. You know, my brother Ayub. You know, rest in peace, Ayub. He passed. You know, in federal custody. He used to do scams with him. That's where he comes from. When him and my brother got caught doing credit card scams, or they were doing some kind of scams that they were doing, and him and my brother both got caught. My brother, they were offered 44 years. My brother ended up staying there and dying. Obviously, he was beat to death. He used to write me all the time. He told me that he was beat to death in prison. And Dujwa got out, and when he came out, he became the ambassador of the Nubian nation.
Right. Well, see, First Republic is known all over the world.
Okay.
And I don't know how he was able to convince First Republic to come in to be the liaison for North America.
The killer clown.
Okay. And identifying me as the rightful matriarch for this land over here. See, London got all the records of what belonged to us. All roads began and end in London. Okay, so I don't know how he wormed his way into the First Republic. He probably charmed his way in. Oh, he's a great advocator, blah, 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 right? But however he got in, then once he got in, then he probably did. I'm agree with you, young elder, that the killer clan.
Yeah, they have to help him. He ain't
They
that
had to help
him. Yeah, he ain't that.
Because the Rothschilds had to release the allodial title and stuff to where I probably was already at birth already. They already knew. They always know who the rightful people is on this land. And I was probably in the system. Let me tell you, I know I was in London.
Then Pops write about you in one of his books saying that you was coming or something.
Yeah, but I want to go back. Before I get there, I gotta make sure to establish something. So if you give me a minute, please. because when you don't tell the whole story the way it needs to, it leads people to their own conclusion.
Right.
And so you have to understand where my position came in at. He had to come get me because London had already knew who the rightful heir to this land was through the Rothschilds.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I know London, I always knew prior before any of this happened, because when I got sick, they had to send me somewhere. And the doctor was instructed not to touch me, that London instructed him where to send me to do. So
I have proof of him being a child molester right here.
Okay, so
paperwork.
The bottom line is, once Bourgeois was probably part of the killer clown and all this going on, when he was able to maneuver himself within the First Republic in the World Court and became whatever he was, a liaison person, which is no longer on the website anymore, because of them finding out what he had done. Now, we bring it up to what the question that you asked.
I have these documents. I have documents of him committing child molestation on a child 9 years old, under the name of Damian Pryor. It was presented to Athens Clark County Police Department, and it was swept under the rug. I literally have these documents right here.
Right.
And I'm not sure if y'all can see my screen or not.
I think everybody knows that Bourgeois is all that, because that's all that's been spoken about. So we believe you and we know that, right? So what we're trying to get to is this release order for your father.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull that up.
And getting clarity. Go back to the release orders.
I'm gonna go back to it. Big Mama, you said that this dude wrestles you down, like he wrestles you for the paperwork, and then he come right here on our YouTube and leave comments. Like, how's this dude still leaving? Where the hell is he? He leaving comments. He said he had the original documents. That's not the original. So that means that, like you said, he must have switched them out on you.
He switched them out when they sent the documents to him. And when it was time for me when we got to Colorado, is when I got the call from the judge, and the people in London were saying that Bourgeois was not allowed on the prison premises. That was about an hour before we was due to go get your father. That Bourgeois had started a riot and they had to call the National Guard in. And to get Bourgeois off of the properties and whoever else he bought with him. So he didn't disclose that to any of us. So that's when the throwdown happened. Okay. And so when I told him to give me the orders, and that me and my marshal was going to go and get your father, because I didn't want them to think that I was coming on the property with Bourgeois, because that would have been setting me and my marshal up with information we should have known about. He didn't tell us that there was an issue with him going on the prison property. And me and my marshal, we don't have we had standing to go on the prison property. He didn't. And he tried to use us as a front to start probably something else. And we didn't appreciate it. So I told him to give me the orders. I got the orders that he gave me in the DHL envelope that it came in, right? He went to his vehicle to get the orders out of there. And I went to the vehicle about maybe 3 minutes after he was in there. I don't know what he's doing in there. And then he he handed me the documents, and then I handed them to my marshal. He snatched them out of my marshal's hand, and then that's when me and him started to toggle a little bit. And I said, "You gonna give me these documents?" And that's the document that you see. So I don't know what he took out of the package before I got to see anything. This is what I got from him. And this is what's been in my possession since then.
This is what I'm trying to figure out, Big Mama. Okay, so he got the original shit, and when they look it up on the sovereignty thing to see if it's like listed or
yeah, I researched it. I researched this document because, you know, I wanted to see if there was an order released from my dad, you know, because I'd never seen this document before. So I researched it, me and my mom, you know, we researched the document and couldn't find the document at all.
Right.
Anything that is, you know, notarized or has any seals on it is registered with of course, the sovereign international courts, or, you know, it would be documented somewhere.
Right.
But there was no document of it at all.
You know, one or two things happened. Like he said, he took the original document. So what else was with the document? That's the question, right? And then was he supposed to take the documents and register them with the world court?
This way he's supposed to do it. Yeah.
And he didn't.
Yeah, he as soon as he got them documents, he shot out of another
That's
whole
correct.
country. And he said, now he's saying he got the originals.
Right.
And those documents, they supposed to have been put on record, and then you'd be able to see it then. But I believe that he got paid off by the killer clowns to skip fucking time, man. Like he was already working for him. Doing from IU, going all the way back to R. Kelly. They've been watching this nigga.
Yeah, you know the document, yeah, he's involved in the yeah, he's been involved even with that R. Kelly case. You know, his whole purpose is, you know, he goes around destroying powerful Black men. That's what it seems like to me, you know, just from what I've been paying attention to with this guy. And no matter how many children he molests, how many women he beat on, this man is still able to run free and do all of what he's doing because obviously he either works for them or works with them or something, because some of this does not make any sense to me.
Well, all I know is this.
Going to get some more tea.
The documents that was given to me, and that is what I have in my possession with the original envelope that supposedly this document came in. Okay. And it did. So whatever he took out of there before was given to me. I'm just now learning about that this document is he got the original document. So now y'all can see that what he did with me and what he did with this document, and that I gave this document was under my, once that went sour in Colorado, I kept the documents in my possession and gave it to the trustee until Rod asked me for the release papers, and that's what I gave him because that's what I have.
That's what I think, Big Mama. I think that this nigga, the killer clowns, knew about you. They knew about your bloodline. They knew who you was. They knew this is one way we could get Malachi out if we tried it. And they tried to beat us to the punch. They fucking got what they call a looking glass, a 32 degree, where they can look and see shit. And so they hate, you got Bible is their number one worst enemy out of anybody that ever walked on this land. He their number one worst enemy. So they went all the way out. They broke all kind of laws and rules to go down, take Bible down. Even in the court.
Yeah. I mean, I was being used as a pawn.
That's a fact.
Although my rightful position is not in question. Because they always knew who I was even before I came into understanding. And I find it very odd now that I think about it, that once I got the book with the Lodial title from the Rothschilds,
was gonna say that.
That from I got it in July the 19th. That July, August, September, October. When was that document dated?
What, the allodial title?
No.
Or this document? That document was
that document.
November.
That was November,
November
right?
11th.
The 11/11. Good God,
Mhm.
y'all. It was a ritual.
Yup.
Let's see. July, August, September, October, November. 4 months later, here's this document, and that as soon as I got in my seat, that they did that Bourgeois talk about Dr. York while I'm over in Egypt getting the judge's seals and all that on everything that was given back through the Rothschild.
About to cut to a video where Damian Pryor snitches on Jacob York about the plot to go to Florida. Now keep in mind, we study micro expressions, and keep in mind how scared he looked when he telling this story. Right? He looked like he afraid. Why is he afraid? Because he's already working for the feds, and he know that this telling this part right here is pretty much keeping him in the game, right? Because he's tied in with Jacob and going down with the feds. And don't forget about what happened to Dr. Malachi Z York's son, Ayub. Damian Pryor and Jacob York know exactly what happened to Ayub. And Jacob York, Yaqub Muhammad, know exactly what happened to his brother, Yadalahi Muhammad, when he put him out the house. Remember, Bible talked about that. We have reason to believe that Yadalahi Muhammad got into it with Jacob York because Jacob York tried to get him to turn and work with the feds against his father. In turn, get into a scuffle or altercation with Yadalahi Muhammad, and supposedly Baba had just gave Yadalahi Muhammad a large sum of money as well. Jacob York puts Yadalahi Muhammad out, and then all of a sudden he gets killed, shot numerous of times on Valentine's Day. And also Baba mentioned of Damian Pryor being in connection with Jacob York and doing the check frauds to scamming on the house and things. So you got to keep in mind all of these connections as we go into this interview. Also might I add that one of Damian Pryor's other names is Basil Muhammad. Then he also forged documents to change his name to Dose York so he can associate himself and tie himself in with Dr. Malachi Z York. Let's get into this interview.
Now we're fortunate enough to have this conspiracy was so powerful that they were blocked when we went to trial to free our master teacher, because what they have to say busts this whole thing wide open. So we want you to hear their perspective on the conspiracy issue involved in this case. We wanted to start with the brother Basil. If you would, can you kind of discuss your relationship with Jake York, and also kind of just give an overview of what the conspiracy was and how it kind of took shape?
I sure will, the best of my ability. And welcome, family. Thanks for tuning in. And this is really a blessing to be able to explain to the world and bring the truth on our forum, not on the devil's forum, not on his time, not on his commercials, on our forum and our way, so you can see clearly the conspiracy, the steps that led up to the incarceration and the unjust kidnapping of our master teacher. For those that are just who needs basically a basic foundation on the mentality of the younger children who were raised in the community, which I was fortunate enough to be raised amongst the young brothers and sisters, Mokmanoon and Mokmanati, in Philadelphia's community. Went to school with them. We ate together, prayed together, danced together, dressed together, all the things that our community was set up, and the principles that Dr. Malachi Z York had laid down for us to live up for and by each other. I was blessed to experience that in the Philadelphia community, where you create a bond as a young brother growing up, and when you're on a certain path of truth, the bond is set as family. So we did things as a family. And yes, there were rules, there were regulations, there was a strict there were strict guidelines in which was necessary to raise a certain mentality here in the West, and it was embedded in us at an early age. And some of those young brothers, sisters, they fell away. Some of us kept the laws and the codes and the things that were established to keep us in line. Those that knew better. Others, people rebel. Most teenagers do at a certain time in their life in most households. Most Catholic churches, regular church, Muslims, Jews, doesn't matter. It's a mentality that, they have their own mind, they have all the answers. Most adults know what happens at that time because most of us went through it. Growing up in the community, dealing with several brothers, you meet different individuals. You grow up with different individuals. You know them on a personal level. Several brothers I became very close with. Ayub, or Christopher Cornelius, who is a dear friend of mine, was a dear friend of mine, and growing up back and forth in New York and Philadelphia, you meet people from various communities. We have various communities all over the world, for those that know about our communal living that was set up and established in different cities across the nation. We grew up together. Through him, I met Jacob York, Yaqub Muhammad, who he is known as. That's his birth name. Not York. He adopted the name York for influence in the music industry. The name York was Dr. Malachi Z York's name, not his. He wasn't born with that name. But that's further down the line. We met in late 80s, early 90s. And personally, we didn't click. I didn't like him. Very egotistical. Most people that know him, they may feel the same way. I don't know. From a personal experience, it was not, it wasn't that type of relationship initially. Me and Ayub, a brother or a son of Dr. Malachi Z York, we were very close. We did things together. We hung out. We're about the same age. We traveled together. Basically, grew up together as brothers. We did what brothers do in the community, for those that just a basic family living, family environment, where we did things as a group. Boys did the things together, the sisters did things together, and we grew up that way. In the 90s, Chris or Ayub, I'm going to be very personal in my experiences so people can get a clear picture on my involvement in reference to the federal government being incarcerated myself, and them knowing me personally because of my involvement in being incarcerated for several years, from 1998 until the year 2000. After my incarceration is when the unfolding of the conspiracy took place. Prior to that, it was just known that Jacob York was a disgruntled hater of his father for his own own reasons leading up to that, through his personal life or personal experience with Dr. Malachi Z York. He had his own reasons, own vendettas, own jealousies, own envies that conjured up and grew in his heart and chest. And most people that knew him knew that he would express that in ways that would baffle the average person, because we were looking at your father. How could you say certain things, or how could you feel a certain way? Us loving Dr. Malachi Z York as we did, it was puzzling, but to each his own. People have their own feelings. So in 1998, I got incarcerated. I did federal time. I was released in 2000 of April. I was released for 5 years, from 2000 to 2005. For my incarceration, Ayub was also incarcerated with me because we were co-defendants. Growing up in our early 20s, we did time together because of some things we were involved with. We did our time, as they say, served time for society, for the crimes we've done, fine. Mistakes, things happen. As a young man, black man growing up in this country, it happens. Incarcerated, did our time, came home. Around 2000 in, say, July, I was working in a barbershop in Atlanta. That's what my release city was. Though I always stayed loyal to the doctrine, always taught the doctrine, always stayed loyal to Dr. Malachi Z York, wrote him several times in prison, incarcerated. I did receive letters back. There was no hate or anything in my heart in reference to my father who raised me since I was 12 years old, moving in the community on my own. I was not brought in by a family. I was adopted by a family. I was converted at an early age and moved in on my own conviction. And I traveled the path and knew who Dr. Malachi Z York is, was, and will always be. So there's no issue with Dr. Malachi Z York and myself. When my release in July or in April, I was working in the barbershop on supervised release where the devil's all in your business, making sure you don't do the things that you were found guilty of, and I had to deal with it. Ayub was released later that year. Him and Jacob were in contact. Me and Jacob had several incidents, run-ins earlier, 97, 96, around that time, where, it wasn't personal. It was more so business. Even though I didn't like him, certain business adventures we did indulge in. And through Ayub, who was my partner, that's, people that know us know that we were rolling together for several years. Getting to the point, Jacob York came to the shop with Ayub. I didn't stay in contact with Jake because I didn't like him. It was not necessarily bumped heads constantly because of his feelings towards Dr. Malachi Z York. I would always defend the master teacher, and to this day, that's what I'm doing up here. And we would clash. Of course, Ayub was his brother. They would talk, but we would clash. Business, maybe, but not necessarily because of our dislike towards each other. Okay, July, came to the barbershop. It was a discussion. I think 2000, no, actually it was 2000. When was it? 2001, okay. This was in the next year, 2001, excuse me. I was still in supervisory when I was working in the barbershop. They came then. Ayub was out. And the feel was this. The conspiracy was already taking place in 2001. The trip was in 2001, correct? Okay. After the trip is when he came to the barbershop and we had a conversation. He came to get his haircut. Ayub was there. And he was trying to feel me out because I know his mentality. I know how he thinks. He's trying to feel how I feel towards Pop. And I had Pop pictures all around. I have the books there. So there's a distance there in his mind because of the fact of my loyalty to the master teacher and things that was necessary or that he wanted done, because certain things that I was known to do that I could get done, he wanted done, and the approach was there by him coming to the shop and feeling the situation out. It didn't go far. Months later, at a Thanksgiving dinner, me and my mate at the time, Ayub and Jake, he brought Jake to the house. This is when I learned about the South Beach trip, not about the conspiracy. I didn't know about the conspiracy in the end of 2001 in November. And I didn't know about it. I just heard about the trip. I heard what was going on in the trip, who was there, pictures. It was a conversation that came up, and, sports, other things that were talked about. But mainly the trip came in, and it was a Memorial Day trip, and it was, it was such a big thing, and all of, young boys and girls got together and went down there, and I got a brief idea. But it wasn't until, the end of 2001, December, when I went to the ball, and I violated my probation because I went to the bar in Macon. It was outside of my jurisdiction. I did not get permission. I kind of conned my way there by showing the address that says Pryor Street is the same address that the bar was being held in Macon. He assumed, my probation officer assumed it was Pryor Street, Atlanta, gave me permission. But I had an ankle monitor on. Once I went there, I violated my probation, supervised release. I was incarcerated the next day in January of 2002. There, in jail, in prison, Ayub was incarcerated that same week for some reason, unrelated incidents. Came in prison. I don't know if they, I'm pretty sure this is how they designed it because we were co-defendants previously. So when I see him, like, it was confusing. I'm like, man, what are you doing here? He's like, I'm looking at him. He's looking at me like, how are you? So it was baffling. I didn't question it. We had a conversation. We're talking. It's like, man, we're doing time again. So I'm like, I'm not going through this again. We're talking, and it began to unfold about the trip. He confided in me the things that was going on in January. Laid it all out. All of it was tied in now with the South Beach trip, the pictures, the conversation at the Thanksgiving dinner, me there, and me incarcerated. I gave a call to a brother. I'm not going to disclose the brother's name. Gave a call to a brother on the land and told them that there's a situation going on with Jake is conspiring against Dr. Malachi Z York with members, girls of the community that left, went on a South Beach trip, laid it all out in a phone conversation. The reply was, I was incarcerated. I was doing 4 months. So that was the only thing I can do. I wrote a letter, tried to inform whoever I could to get it to them, but it was a brief response that wasn't detailed enough because of the lack of communication being incarcerated. Okay, I was released. I did 120 days. I was released in April. Maybe like a week or two before the master got incarcerated on May 8th. When I was released, I laid it all out. I wrote a letter. I could not go to the land because I was still on supervised release. It was outside my jurisdiction. I did not want to bring my activities or jeopardize what I was doing and bring it or affiliate it with the community. Even though they knew who I was because of my incarceration. Anyone that knows when the federal government, they have a PSI, they lay out exactly who you are, where you're from, what you were involved in. All of that is in my PSI. They knew I lived on the land. They knew I was in the community. They knew I was affiliated with Dr. Malachi Z York's sons, Christopher Cornelius, one of them. They knew these things. That's their business. That's their job. So getting it to him with the letter, I passed it to a brother and to take it to him. And portions of that letter, the conspiracy letter, is in the flyer that came out 2 years later, where if you read the flyer, you see excerpts from a letter that they say Jake's best friend wrote in reference to Jake coming to the house and asking, this is what, back to the point so you know what he came to the house for at Thanksgiving. He was asking about a house he wanted to purchase, and he wanted me to defraud the paperwork to make his income higher than what he was making so he can purchase a bigger house, which would gather or house the girls who left the land and place them in a position where he could manipulate the young individuals, bring them together, create the case, make him appear as though he's the savior, he's the one that's going to look out for them because he has ties to the world. He put out Little Kim and he put out Junior Mafia, and he's this big so-called music industry icon that can help anybody that leaves the land. You've been in prison, you've been held back. That's not the way to live. Come to me. This is my house. I can do this for you. I can take you to parties. I can dance. He appealed to all of those things that people wanted. Those individuals that left, he gave it to them. They ran right to the Lions Den. So with that purchase, which he did, I didn't do for him. I told him no, but I still had the paperwork. That was given with the letter to show. I had Jacob York, his address, his name, all the money that he had in his account. From the amount he deposits, he wanted me to make the deposits bigger so the income and his yearly income would appear larger. So when you go purchase a house, the bank could approve the loan. So that's with the whole Thanksgiving thing. When he came to the dinner, that's what it was. That's what it boiled up to. And I decided, I said, no, I'm not doing it. I'm already, and I'm trying to clear my name, get back on the right path, get back in good grace with the master teacher, get back in good grace with the community, and straighten my name out. I already served my time. There was no need for me to indulge back in those things. So I told him no, but he left the paperwork, which was a blessing. When I got out, I was able to give it to whoever was necessary. At the time, I didn't know anything. I did 4 months. I didn't know what was going on. So I came out at the end of April. A week later, Pops gets incarcerated. He gets locked up. So I'm like, I know about the conspiracy. I can testify about the whole from way back up until that point. First-hand information. What he said was being done. So to tie all that ends, because a lot of people don't know at what point I come in the picture. It's like, you know, did you just pop up? Is this something where did you come from? And I want to make it clear to the family and to people who are listening, this is not something that's just a pop-up thing. This is an ongoing conspiracy from way back that started with this young guy, this young man, who simply as well, and the feds watching him as well and having charges against him as well. They used him to use the individuals for the conspiracy because they needed a bigger fish to fry. And that's how it took place. And from then, the trial, we talk about the trial, which is another show. I'm thinking I don't want to take up too much time, but I wanted to be very clear and specific on how that took place. And me having that information about him trying to defraud the government, which gives him a criminal charge. It ties in to me going to trial and then blocking the testimony because of his involvement as an informant. Once he knew the charges against him, he decided to conspire with the other individuals to take the heat off of him, to take the heat off of other individuals as well, and to bring our master teacher down and take the land. So if any questions to make it clear, I don't want to take up too much time, but any specific questions that people want to ask, like the sister said, the forum is open specifically for any one of us, and I'll pass the mic to Farah, who can clearly clear up the Southeast Strip, because she was a part of the individuals who he tried to involve in the conspiracy. So you see how it ties in.
Mighty funny, right after Damian Pryor works his way all the way up in the tribe to be ambassador, and he sabotaged Baba from getting out, he disappears over to Africa. Now keep in mind how the killer clowns work. What they would do is, once you get through working as an informant, they can give you a deal to skip you in an unknown location and give you another name. This happened in the case of Henry Hill, who snitched on the mafia. This happened in the case of Alpo, who snitched on Wayne Perry, right? When he got out of jail, they gave him a name, Abraham, moved him upstate, gave him a job in an undisclosed location. So mighty funny that after everything gets sabotaged, after he staged the ride, after he wrestled the paperwork out of Mama's Rabbit hand, he get into it with Uma. We got that tape too if you want to check that tape out, right? Scroll down on the video side. We just saying, where's Damian Pryor now? And he says he has the original paperwork to get Doc out. So we just asking for this guy to show his face and, so we can find out what's going on here. Inclusive, we have reason to believe Damian Pryor was working for the killer clowns. And now he's hiding out somewhere in Africa, right? We rest our case, Your Honor. Yon, Waru. Hey, y'all, thanks for tuning in. This series is to be continued. Now, we're running a 10K fundraiser for the master teacher. We're trying to raise $10,000 by June 26th, which is the master teacher's birthday, right? If you want to help us out on that, what you would do is you would cash out Uma, the master teacher's daughter, right, at Uma's York LLC, right? And keep in mind, we working to get the master teacher out, and we need a couple funds to make a couple plays, right, on getting certain things pushed through and moved around, and certain travel expenses to go and get certain things filed. So if you want to help us out and you got love for the master teacher, man, show us some love.